Welcome back, everybody. Some pretty major changes have been happening to Firefall in the last few months. We've had classes swapped in and out, we've had a combat overhaul, and a total revamp of the crafting system. But the thing that's interesting me most right now is this idea of dynamic events they've been toying with. You see, it answers one of the very first questions we asked lead designer Mark Kern on the very first day we met. How do you get away from the standard MMO quests? You know the ones: fetch, FedEx, grind. Epic hero, I'm in desperate need of 10 rat feet. Can you help me? We have done 1,000 of these across numerous MMOs. Heck, some of us have probably done several thousand. Now, while these quests are often an essential part of what gives MMOs their longevity, and I don't think we should break away from them completely, I think it's time for the next step. Time to do something different. After all, most avid MMO players will recognize all these quest types from the MUDs way back in the 1980s. So what is the next step? How can we retain that goal-driven, always something to do nature of MMOs, while making that something to do more interesting? Well, the approach Firefall is taking seems twofold. It's a technical shift, but also a philosophical one. On the technical side, they're implementing something they call dynamic events. These are events that aren't simply placed in the world. They're triggered by a combination of player patterns and a dynamic AI. So imagine if an MMO had Left 4 Dead's AI director. That's basically what they're going for. It places events, rearranges enemy spawns, and in general simply makes things more dynamic in response to how players play. This opens up whole new doors on how alive we can make an MMO world feel. Guild Wars 2 recently introduced situational events, which are a fantastic evolution of the classic MMO quest model, but in some ways they're still static. They really add to the feel of the world and give a vibrant, living sense to the place you're playing in, but it's still a rigidly pre-arranged system under the hood. The second or third time you play through any given zone, the quest patterns become very obvious and game-like. It's still a huge step forward, don't get me wrong, but how much more compelling could we make these events if they were truly responsive? If we could add these world events not based on set triggers, but rather on the subtle shifts of player behavior as understood by an overarching AI. You can kind of think of it as a scaled-back dungeon master, creating a tale that's more compelling than a linear series of events. How cool would that be to have a DM, even in an extremely limited form for your MMO? Now, before I get carried away though, let me take a quick step back. I'm aware that we might be upselling this feature a bit. We've only seen bits and pieces of the dynamic event system so far, and heard the team's plans for what they intend it to be. And if you ask me, it's likely to be far from perfect at launch. No one gets a system that complex perfect right out of the gate. No, as with many of Firefall's features, we're excited about the possibilities, about what might happen if they knock this out of the park, and what it'll mean for MMOs in the future. I've said it before in previous videos, but one of the main reasons we're doing this little series is because we're impressed by the risks Red 5 has been willing to take, that they're even attempting things like this, things that have never been pulled off before. They're really reaching for the sky here, and maybe they'll just end up falling flat on their face. Or maybe they'll actually succeed. Either way, we're just excited that they're trying it. So take everything we say here with a grain of salt, because this system probably won't feel like a dungeon master even in a limited capacity right away. But if they keep iterating on it and refining the system, what if it eventually does? That would just... There was something else I was supposed to oh, right. There's also the philosophical shift to talk about. For the longest time, MMO design has largely been about actions occurring within a space. The design focus was on placing these actions within that space. Quests occur at specific locations. Monsters spawn here, 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 and here, at specific points in the world. No one really considers the possibility of events happening in time. And this is because if an NPC only gave a quest at 8 AM world time, well, that would just be annoying. But what if we thought about time in a different way? If we thought about it in terms of the time you spend between when you log in and when you log out? What if we thought of events unfolding around you as you play, unfolding in your time? This would help us create a much better interest curve for MMOs, and get away from the idea of the town quest hub, where you arrive, gather 20 different quests, wander outside to complete them, check everything off the to-do list, go back to town and turn them in. Imagine if there was something like a D&D table of random events that would be rolled for your character periodically as you played, to make sure that even no 2 sessions of grinding would be the same. That's the idea behind time-based dynamic events. Put those two together, and then allow event outcomes to change based on how they're completed, and you have a potentially awesome system that'll let designers break away from the classic questing model and deliver something much more dynamic. In this system, the game world isn't just something for the player to act on, but rather something which they're a part of, something which acts on them. So yeah, it's a lofty goal, but even if the end result doesn't quite live up to Red 5's ambitions, it'll still be a big step toward creating a living world like we've always wanted in an MMO. Thanks for watching.